The court ordered my business partner to show their phone. They destroyed it. The notification from my bank hit my phone at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in March, and I knew immediately that something was catastrophically wrong. Account alert, wire transfer of $847,000 processed from TechFlow Solutions operating account. I sat bolt upright in bed, my heart hammering against my ribs. $847,000. Nearly half of our company's liquid assets, gone in the middle of the night to an account I'd never seen before. My fingers flew across the screen as I logged into our business banking portal. The transfer had been initiated at 11:23 p.m., authorized with digital signatures from both required parties, mine, and my business partner Marcus Chen's. Except I'd been asleep by 10, and I sure as hell hadn't authorized any wire transfers. I threw on clothes and drove to our office in downtown Portland, my mind racing through explanations that made less sense the more I thought about them. Marcus and I had built TechFlow from nothing 5 years ago, two broke computer science grads with a dream and a revolutionary logistics algorithm. We'd scraped together our last $3,000 to incorporate, lived on ramen for 2 years, and finally started turning real profit 18 months ago. Marcus was supposed to be my closest friend, the best man at my wedding next fall. We'd pulled all-nighters together, celebrated our first major client contract with cheap champagne, and split everything 50-50 down to the last paperclip. The office was dark except for the emergency lighting, but Marcus's Tesla was in the parking lot. I used my keycard and found him hunched over his laptop in the conference room, multiple monitors glowing around him like some kind of digital war room. Working late? I asked from the doorway. He spun around so fast his chair nearly tipped over. Jesus, David. You scared me. What are you doing here? Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing. I held up my phone. Care to explain this? His face went through a series of micro-expressions, surprise, calculation, then something that looked almost like relief. Oh, that. Yeah, I was going to call you in the morning. Emergency payment to our server hosting company. They were threatening to shut us down. At midnight? For almost $1 million. To an account registered to something called Pacific Northwest Technical Consulting. Marcus's jaw tightened. Look, it's complicated. There were some back-end infrastructure costs that. Cut the shit, Marcus. I stepped into the room and closed the door behind me. I called ServerMax 20 minutes ago. Yeah, I woke up their emergency support line. We don't owe them a dime. In fact, we're 3 months ahead on payments. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Outside, Portland's early morning traffic was starting to build, but inside our conference room, you could hear a pin drop. I can explain everything, Marcus said finally, but his voice had gone flat, mechanical. Then explain this. I pulled out my tablet and showed him the screenshot I'd taken. Pacific Northwest Technical Consulting was incorporated 6 months ago. The registered agent is Sarah Chen. That's your sister, right? His shoulders sagged, and for a moment, the mask slipped completely. The Marcus I thought I knew, my partner, my friend, was gone. In his place sat a stranger who'd been systematically destroying everything we'd built together. How long? I asked quietly. He looked up at me with eyes I didn't recognize. How long what? How long have you been stealing from our company? The question hung in the air between us like poison gas. Marcus stared at me for what felt like an eternity, his fingers drumming against the conference table in that nervous tick I'd seen 1,000 times during client presentations. It's not what you think, he said finally. Really? Because what I think is that my business partner has been embezzling money and I'm about to lose everything I've worked for. I sat down across from him, keeping the table between us. So please, enlighten me about what it actually is. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, another nervous habit. The Yamamoto deal. You remember how we almost lost it because our algorithm wasn't fast enough? Of course I remembered. Yamamoto Industries was our biggest client, worth $2.3 million annually. 3 months ago, they'd threatened to walk because our logistics software was running 0.3 seconds slower than our competitors. Yeah, and we fixed it. You said you'd optimize the code. I didn't optimize shit, David. His voice was barely above a whisper. I bought the solution. My stomach dropped. What do you mean, bought it? Dataflow Systems. Our biggest competitor. I reached out to someone there. Got access to their optimization algorithms. He wouldn't meet my eyes. It cost money. A lot of money. Jesus Christ, Marcus. That's corporate espionage. That's what saved our company. He slammed his hand on the table. Yamamoto would have dropped us. We'd have lost everything anyway. I stared at him, trying to process what I was hearing. So you've been paying Dataflow for stolen code? For 3 months. Not exactly. Marcus's voice got even quieter. The payments, they wanted more than money. A cold dread settled in my chest. What else? Information. About our clients. Our development roadmap. Future projects. The room started spinning. You've been selling our proprietary information to our competitors. It was supposed to be temporary. Just until we could develop our own solutions. I was going to pay everything back, I swear. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through our recent bank statements, really looking at them for the first time in months. Marcus had always handled the day-to-day financial operations while I focused on development and client relations. Now I could see the pattern, irregular transfers, consulting fees to companies I'd never heard of, equipment purchases that never materialized. $34,000 to Advanced Analytics LLC 2 weeks ago. What was that for? Marcus wouldn't answer. $67,000 to Innovation Partners last month. Marcus, what the hell is Innovation Partners? They're shell companies, he admitted. Look, it started small. Just a few thousand here and there to cover the payments to Dataflow. But then they wanted more information, and the payments got bigger, and... How much? I interrupted. Total. How much have you stolen? The silence stretched for 30 seconds. A full 30 seconds while I watched my business partner, my friend, calculate the scope of his betrayal. Including tonight. About $1.8 million over the past 6 months. The number hit me like a physical blow. Nearly $2 million. More than our entire profit from last year. Money that should have gone toward expanding our team, developing new products, building the future we'd planned together. We're done, I said, standing up. This partnership is over. I'm calling the police. Marcus jumped to his feet. David, wait. Please. We can fix this. I can make this right. But I was already walking toward the door, my phone in my hand. I had no idea how much worse things were about to get. I made it 3 steps toward the door before Marcus spoke again. You can't call the police. Something in his voice made me stop. Not desperation, I'd expected that. This was different. Colder. More calculating. Watch me, I said, not turning around. David, you really can't. Because if you do, Yamamoto's going to find out that their entire logistics system is built on stolen code. And Dataflow's going to sue us for corporate espionage. And every single one of our clients is going to realize that their proprietary shipping data has been sold to their competitors. I turned around slowly. Marcus was still standing behind the conference table, but his posture had changed. The defeated slump was gone, replaced by something that looked almost triumphant. Are you threatening me? I'm protecting both of us. You think this doesn't blow back on you? You're the CEO, David. Your signature is on every client contract. When this comes out, and it will come out if you involve the police, who do you think they're going to blame? My phone felt heavy in my hand. I didn't know about any of this. Can you prove that? Because I've got 6 months of emails where you approved consulting budgets, equipment purchases, and operational expenses. Your digital signature is on every transaction over $50,000. Those were forged. You forged my signatures. Marcus pulled out his laptop and turned it toward me. Were they? Because here's an email from you 3 weeks ago, approving a $43,000 payment to Innovation Partners for competitive analysis services. Your corporate email address, sent from your IP address at 3:47 p.m. on a Wednesday. I've got the metadata to prove it. I stared at the screen. The email was there, in my sent folder, with my digital signature attached. But I'd never written it. I'd never even heard of Innovation Partners until 20 minutes ago. You hacked my email account. I had IT access to all our systems. Just like you do. Marcus closed the laptop. The point is, David, we're in this together whether you like it or not. You can't burn me without burning yourself. I felt the walls closing in. Every client contract Marcus had mentioned was worth millions. Yamamoto alone would sue us into oblivion if they discovered their logistics data had been compromised. And he was right about the optics. As CEO, I'd be held responsible for everything that happened under my watch. What do you want? I asked. I want to fix this. Give me 6 months. I can unwind the deals with Dataflow, return the information, and pay back most of the money. Most of it. The consulting fees are gone. But the algorithm payments, the data transfers, those can be reversed if we handle this quietly. I wanted to believe him. God help me, part of me actually wanted to believe that my best friend hadn't just systematically destroyed everything we built together and then threatened to frame me for it. How? I asked. How do we fix $1.8 million in theft? Marcus sat back down, suddenly animated. I've been working on a new client. Meridian Shipping. They're huge, 3 times bigger than Yamamoto. If we can land them, the signing bonus alone would be $2.4 million. And you think they'll sign with a company that's hemorrhaging money to shell corporations? They don't know about that. Nobody knows except us. Marcus leaned forward. David, I know I fucked up. I know this is bad. But if we play this right, we can come out ahead. We can pay back everything, keep our existing clients, and actually grow the business. I stared at him, this person I'd trusted with everything. Or you'll steal from them too. I won't. I swear to God, David, this was a one-time thing. I panicked when we almost lost Yamamoto, and I made some terrible decisions. But I can fix this. Outside, Portland was waking up. In a few hours, our employees would start arriving. Our clients would expect their systems to work flawlessly. Our investors would expect their quarterly reports. And I had to decide whether to trust the man who just confessed to stealing nearly $2 million from our company. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my car in the office parking lot until 6 a.m., watching Marcus's Tesla finally pull away, trying to figure out how my life had imploded in a span of 3 hours. By the time I got home, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to trust Marcus to fix anything. But I also wasn't going to let him drag me down with him. I spent the morning setting up a meeting with Janet Morrison, the best corporate attorney in Portland. Her retainer alone was going to cost me $25,000 I didn't have, but I needed someone who understood white-collar crime and corporate liability. The good news, Janet said after I'd explained everything, is that the forged signatures might actually work in your favor. If we can prove he was accessing your accounts without authorization, that establishes a pattern of deception. And the bad news? The bad news is that proving forgery is harder than you think, especially when you have legitimate access to your systems. And even if we can prove it, you're still looking at massive civil liability from your clients. I rubbed my temples. So what are my options? Honestly, your best bet is to gather as much evidence as possible before he realizes you're building a case. Bank records, email logs, any documentation of these shell companies. The more proof we have of systematic fraud, the better we can separate you from his actions. That afternoon, I went back to the office with a plan. Marcus was in back-to-back client calls, which gave me access to our shared server systems. I started documenting everything, every suspicious transaction, every shell company, every forged authorization. What I found was so much worse than I'd imagined. The theft didn't start 6 months ago. It started 18 months ago, right after we'd signed our first major profit-sharing agreement. Marcus had been skimming smaller amounts, $5,000 here, $10,000 there, and funneling them through a network of fake consulting companies. But that wasn't the worst part. I found email threads between Marcus and someone at Dataflow Systems going back over a year. They weren't just buying our data, they were planning to systematically destroy our client relationships. Phase 3 implementation should begin in Q4, read one email from Marcus to someone named Email Protected. Yamamoto will need 48 to 72 hours of service disruption to justify the transition. Make sure the new contracts are ready to deploy immediately. My blood turned to ice. Marcus hadn't just been selling our information. He'd been planning to sabotage our systems and hand our clients directly to Dataflow. I kept reading. The emails laid out a detailed timeline, deliberate system failures, coordinated client outreach from Dataflow during our technical difficulties, and pre-negotiated contracts to steal our biggest accounts. The Meridian shipping deal he'd mentioned. That was the final phase. Marcus was planning to use their signing bonus to cover his tracks, then trigger a catastrophic technical failure that would drive all our clients to Dataflow. After that, he'd dissolve TechFlow, pocket whatever assets remained, and probably get a job at Dataflow managing the clients he'd helped them steal. I was still staring at the screen when I heard footsteps behind me. Find anything interesting? I spun around. Marcus was standing in the doorway, but he wasn't alone. A man in an expensive suit stood next to him, tall, gray-haired, with the kind of confident posture that screamed executive. David, Marcus said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, I'd like you to meet Richard Yamamoto. He was just telling me about some concerns Yamamoto Industries has been having about our partnership. The man stepped forward and extended his hand. Mr. Kim. I think it's time we had a conversation about the future of your company. I realized I was still logged into Marcus's email account, the screen full of incriminating evidence behind me. My finger hovered over the mouse, trying to decide whether closing the window would make things better or worse. Please, Richard Yamamoto said, don't let us interrupt your work. I slowly closed the browser window, my hand surprisingly steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Mr. Yamamoto. I wasn't expecting you today. Richard Yamamoto's smile was polite but predatory. Marcus called me this morning. Said there were some irregularities in our service agreement that needed immediate attention. My eyes flicked to Marcus, who was watching me with barely concealed satisfaction. Irregularities? System performance issues, Marcus said smoothly. I've been analyzing our response times, and I'm concerned we might not be meeting our contractual obligations. The bastard was accelerating his timeline. Whatever Phase 3 was supposed to happen in Q4, he was moving it up to right now. With me standing there, looking guilty as hell with his stolen emails still fresh on my screen. Actually, I said, forcing my voice to stay level, our performance metrics have been outstanding. We're running 23% faster than contracted speeds across all Yamamoto systems. Yamamoto raised an eyebrow. That's interesting. Because Marcus was just showing me some data that suggests otherwise. Marcus pulled out his tablet and swiped to a series of charts and graphs. These are from this morning's analysis. Response times averaging 4.7 seconds, with some queries taking up to 12 seconds to process. That's well outside our service level agreement. I stared at the data. The charts looked official, complete with our company letterhead and timestamps from earlier today. But they were complete fabrications. Our actual response times averaged 0.8 seconds, which was part of why Yamamoto had been so happy with our service. I'd like to see the raw data behind those metrics, I said. Of course, Marcus replied. It's all documented in our server logs. Richard, would you like me to walk you through the technical details? Please do, Yamamoto said, settling into one of our conference chairs. For the next 20 minutes, I watched my business partner deliver a masterful performance. He pulled up real server logs, but manipulated the display parameters to show artificially inflated response times. He demonstrated system stress tests that were actually him running resource-intensive background processes to slow down our queries. He even showed supposed error reports from other clients, all completely fake, but professionally formatted and utterly convincing. The bottom line, Marcus concluded, is that our current infrastructure can't handle the volume of data Yamamoto Industries requires. We need either a significant reduction in query volume or a fundamental redesign of our architecture. Yamamoto leaned back in his chair. How long would a redesign take? 6 to 8 months minimum. And during that time, service would be even more unreliable. That's unacceptable. We can't have our logistics systems failing during peak shipping season. I jumped in. Mr. Yamamoto, with all due respect, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Our systems are performing exactly as designed. These metrics Marcus is showing you don't match our actual operational data. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. David, I know you've been focused on the business development side, but the technical reality is. The technical reality is that I wrote 60% of our core algorithms myself. I moved to the whiteboard and started sketching out our system architecture. Our current setup processes Yamamoto queries through a distributed cache layer that should be delivering sub-second response times under normal load. I was buying time, trying to figure out how to expose Marcus's deception without looking like a madman. But as I drew the system diagrams, I realized something that made my blood run cold. Marcus had administrative access to our entire network. If he wanted to, he could actually create the system failures he was faking. All of this, the fake metrics, the manufactured crisis, bringing Yamamoto here to witness my supposed incompetence, it was theater. But the finale would be real. Marcus, I said carefully, when did you run these performance tests? This morning. Around 10 a.m. I checked my watch. 2:47 p.m. And our systems are still under this heavy load? Should be, yes. I pulled out my phone and opened our system monitoring app. Everything was green. Performance normal, response times optimal, no errors. That's strange, I said, showing Yamamoto my screen. Because according to our real-time monitoring, everything looks perfect. Marcus's face went through a series of micro-expressions as he stared at my phone screen showing our perfect system metrics. The monitoring app must be cached, he said, but I could hear the uncertainty creeping into his voice. Yamamoto leaned forward to look at my screen. Mr. Chen, you said the system was currently experiencing these delays. It was this morning, Marcus insisted, pulling out his own tablet. Let me run another test right now. I watched him navigate to our admin panel, his fingers moving quickly across the screen. Too quickly. He was trying to execute something, probably a script to artificially load our servers and create the performance problems he'd been fabricating. Actually, I said, stepping closer to look over his shoulder, why don't we run the test together? I'd love to see your methodology. Marcus angled the tablet away from me. It's pretty technical, David. Maybe we should just. I insist. I moved around behind him so I could see his screen, and what I saw made my heart stop. He had a terminal window open with a script called Yamamoto_failure_simulation.py and another window showing administrative access to Dataflow system servers. Marcus wasn't just planning to sabotage our systems, he was going to route Yamamoto's traffic directly to our competitor's infrastructure while making it look like our servers had crashed. Interesting file names you have there, I said loudly enough for Yamamoto to hear. Marcus slammed the tablet shut, but it was too late. Yamamoto's expression had shifted from mild concern to sharp attention. Mr. Chen, what exactly was on that screen? Just diagnostic tools, Marcus said, sweat beading on his forehead. Standard troubleshooting protocols. I made a split-second decision that would either save my company or destroy what little credibility I had left. Mr. Yamamoto, I need to show you something. Marcus, I'm going to need you to log back into your email account. David, what are you doing? Marcus's voice had gone dangerously quiet. I'm showing our client the truth. I turned to Yamamoto. 30 minutes ago, I discovered that my business partner has been selling your proprietary shipping data to Dataflow systems for over a year. The conference room went dead silent. Yamamoto's face was stone, but I could see the fury building behind his eyes. Explain. Marcus stood up abruptly. David's having some kind of breakdown. The stress of our financial situation has. Our financial situation caused by you stealing $1.8 million from our company accounts, I interrupted. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. Mr. Yamamoto, I'm forwarding you screenshots of email conversations between Marcus and someone at Dataflow. They detail the systematic theft of your logistics data, your shipping routes, and your client information. You son of a bitch, Marcus snarled, lunging toward my phone. But Yamamoto was faster. He grabbed Marcus's wrist and twisted, forcing him back into his chair with the kind of controlled violence that suggested he hadn't always been an executive. Sit down, Mr. Chen. Yamamoto's voice was arctic. Mr. Kim, please continue. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the screenshots I'd taken earlier. The emails show that Dataflow has been paying Marcus for access to your data through shell companies. But that's not the worst part. They've been planning to sabotage our systems during your peak shipping season and offer you emergency support contracts. Marcus was going to trigger fake system failures to drive you directly into their arms. Yamamoto took my phone and scrolled through the images, his face getting darker with each screenshot. These emails discuss proprietary information about our Pacific Rim shipping routes. Information that we've never shared outside our organization. Information that's been worth about $340,000 to Marcus over the past 8 months, I said. I want to see the original emails, Yamamoto said. Not screenshots. The actual files with metadata intact. Marcus had gone completely pale. Richard, you have to understand, I was trying to protect both our companies. Dataflow was threatening to. Log into your email account, Yamamoto commanded. Now. Marcus looked at me, then at Yamamoto, calculating his options. I could practically see him weighing the pros and cons of compliance versus destruction of evidence. Finally, he opened his laptop and navigated to our company email server. But instead of logging in, he opened a terminal window and typed a single command, rm/var/mail/mchen/**. He was deleting everything. Stop. I lunged for Marcus's laptop, but he slammed it shut and clutched it against his chest like a shield. Yamamoto was already on his phone. Security. I need you in conference room B immediately. He ended the call and fixed Marcus with a stare that could have melted steel. Mr. Chen, you just destroyed evidence in front of a witness. That's a federal crime. Marcus's laugh was high-pitched, almost hysterical. Evidence of what? David's having a paranoid episode. There's no proof of anything. Actually, I said, pulling out my tablet with hands that had finally stopped shaking, there is. 6 months ago, after I'd noticed some strange network activity, I'd implemented a company-wide backup system that automatically archived all emails, file transfers, and system logs to an encrypted cloud server. Marcus knew about the standard daily backups, but he didn't know about the real-time mirroring I'd set up through a third-party service. I'd been paranoid about losing client data to a system crash. Turns out, I'd been paranoid about the wrong threat. Our IT policy requires redundant backups of all company communications, I explained to Yamamoto while logging into the archive server. Everything Marcus just deleted is still available. Marcus went from pale to gray. That's illegal surveillance. You can't monitor employee emails without consent. I can when it's company equipment and company accounts. Every employee signed a digital monitoring agreement when we implemented the new security protocols. I found the archived folder and opened the first email thread. Including you, Marcus. You signed it on September 15th at 3:24 p.m. The emails were all there. Months of correspondence with email protected, detailed discussions of payment schedules, specific client data transfers, and a systematic plan to destroy tech flow from the inside. Yamamoto read over my shoulder, his breathing getting deeper with each message. When he reached the email discussing Yamamoto transition protocols, he straightened up and walked to the window. Mr. Kim, these emails reference shipping manifests from our Singapore operation. Documents that contain classified military contract information. His voice was deadly quiet. Mr. Chen wasn't just selling our commercial data. He was trafficking defense-related logistics intelligence. My stomach dropped. Military contracts. That elevated everything from corporate espionage to potential treason. Marcus had gone from white-collar fraud to something that could land him in federal prison for decades. I didn't know, Marcus stammered. They never told me what the documents contained. I just provided access to the shipping databases like they asked. Like they paid you to do, I corrected, scrolling to an email discussing a $67,000 payment for Singapore manifest access. Two security guards appeared in the doorway, not our usual rent-a-cops, but serious-looking men in dark suits with earpieces. Yamamoto Industries was bigger than I'd realized, and apparently more connected than I'd imagined. Gentlemen, Yamamoto said without turning around, please ensure Mr. Chin doesn't leave the building. And confiscate any electronic devices he's carrying. Marcus bolted for the door, but the guards moved with professional efficiency. Within seconds, they had him back in his chair with his laptop, tablet, and phone laid out on the conference table. This is kidnapping, Marcus protested. You can't hold me here. We're not holding you, Yamamoto replied calmly. We're waiting for the FBI. The blood drained from Marcus's face. The FBI. Corporate espionage involving defense contractors is a federal matter, Mr. Chin. Especially when it involves data trafficking to foreign entities. Yamamoto finally turned around, and I saw something in his expression that made me realize I'd been thinking too small about everything. David, he said, I think it's time you learned exactly who Dataflow Systems really is. The FBI arrived 47 minutes later, but in those 47 minutes, Richard Yamamoto dismantled everything I thought I knew about my company, my industry, and my business partner. Dataflow Systems isn't just our competitor, Yamamoto explained while we waited. They're a front company. 60% owned by Sino-Pacific Trading Group, which is itself a subsidiary of entities tied to Chinese state intelligence. I stared at him. You're saying Marcus was selling our data to foreign spies? Not intentionally, probably. But yes. Yamamoto pulled out his own tablet and showed me a classified briefing document. We've been tracking data flow for 18 months. They've been systematically targeting American logistics companies that handle government contracts. Marcus had gone completely silent, slumped in his chair like a deflated balloon. But I caught him glancing at the door every few seconds, still calculating escape routes. How did you know? I asked Yamamoto. About Marcus, I mean. You couldn't have known this morning when he called you. We didn't know it was him specifically. But we knew someone inside TechFlow was feeding information to Dataflow. Our shipping algorithms started showing up in their system updates 3 weeks after we shared them with you. Yamamoto's smile was grim. When Marcus called this morning claiming system failures, it fit the pattern we'd been expecting. What pattern? The final phase. Create a crisis, offer to help the client transition to a more reliable provider, then disappear with whatever assets they could liquidate. Yamamoto looked at Marcus with disgust. Dataflow's been running this playbook against 6 different logistics companies over the past 2 years. My phone buzzed with a text from Janet Morrison, *FBI called me. Don't say anything without me there. En route, *. 20 minutes later, the conference room looked like something out of a spy thriller. 2 FBI agents in dark suits, my lawyer frantically taking notes, Yamamoto's security team, and Marcus looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Special Agent Sarah Chin, no relation to Marcus, despite the name, laid out a stack of documents on our conference table. Mr. Kim, we've been investigating Dataflow Systems for 14 months as part of Operation Silent Harbor. Your partner's activities came to our attention 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago. I looked between the agent and Marcus. You've been watching us for 6 weeks. We've been watching Dataflow's financial transactions. Shell companies, cryptocurrency exchanges, offshore accounts. Mr. Chen's name appeared frequently enough to warrant investigation. Agent Chen opened a folder thick with bank records. Pacific Northwest Technical Consulting, Innovation Partners, Advanced Analytics LLC, all registered to addresses that don't exist, all receiving payments from Dataflow subsidiaries. Janet leaned forward. Agent Chen, my client had no knowledge of these transactions. He's the victim here, not a co-conspirator. We're aware. Mr. Kim's digital footprint shows he was systematically excluded from communications and financial decisions starting 8 months ago. The agent looked directly at me. We also know about the backup servers you implemented. That data has been invaluable to our investigation. Marcus finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I want a lawyer. You'll get one, Agent Chin replied. But first, we need to secure your devices and accounts. Dataflow Systems received a data transfer from your laptop 17 minutes ago, right after you deleted your email folders. My blood went cold. 17 minutes ago. He's been sending them information this whole time. Agent Chin nodded. Automatic synchronization protocols. Every time Mr. Chin accessed company files, copies were forwarded to Dataflow servers in real time. Including the conversation we're having right now, if he had any active monitoring software running. Yamamoto's security chief stepped forward and whispered something urgent in his ear. Yamamoto's face darkened as he listened. Agent Chin, Yamamoto said, we need to expedite this. Our analysts just detected unauthorized access attempts on our Singapore shipping databases. Someone's trying to download our complete military contract archives. Now. Agent Chen was already on her radio. All units, we need immediate digital forensic support at TechFlow Solutions. Marcus started laughing, a broken, hysterical sound that made my skin crawl. You're all too late. The Singapore files finished downloading 20 minutes ago. The room erupted into chaos. Agent Chen was barking orders into her radio while Yamamoto's security chief was frantically typing on his phone. But all I could focus on was Marcus's deranged laughter echoing off the conference room walls. 20 minutes, he repeated, wiping tears from his eyes. 20 goddamn minutes while you all sat here playing detective. Do you have any idea how much classified shipping data moves through Singapore in a single day? Agent Chen grabbed Marcus by the shoulder. What activation protocols did you use? How are they accessing the databases? Marcus just smiled at her, the same smile he used to give me when he'd figured out a particularly elegant piece of code. You think I'm going to help you now? After you've destroyed my life? Your life. I exploded, standing up so fast my chair hit the wall. You destroyed our company. You sold military secrets to foreign agents. I saved us. Marcus screamed back. Dataflow offered us a way out when we were hemorrhaging money on failed projects. Remember the Hartwell disaster? The Morrison account that never paid? We were 3 weeks from bankruptcy and you wanted to keep pretending everything was fine. Janet grabbed my arm, pulling me back. David, don't engage. But Marcus wasn't done. You want to know the truth? Dataflow approached me 18 months ago with a simple proposition. Feed them competitive intelligence, get paid enough to keep TechFlow afloat until we could land bigger contracts. It was supposed to be temporary. 18 months, I said, my voice hollow. Our entire recovery. Every success we've had since then was built on blood money. It was built on survival, Marcus shot back. And it worked, didn't it? Until you had to go playing cyber detective and ruin everything. Agent Chen's radio crackled with urgent voices. Agent Chen, we've got a problem. The Singapore intrusion isn't just downloading files, they're planting malware in the shipping control systems. If they activate it during peak traffic periods, how many ships could be affected? Yamamoto demanded. Potentially hundreds. Container ships, military vessels, civilian cargo. The voice on the radio was tight with stress. We're looking at possible navigation system failures across the entire Pacific shipping corridor. My knees went weak. Marcus hadn't just been selling data. He'd been providing access for what amounted to cyber terrorism against international shipping infrastructure. Marcus, I said quietly, people could die. If those ships lose navigation during storms, or in crowded shipping lanes. For just a moment, his cocky facade cracked. I saw a flicker of the friend I used to know, the guy who'd stayed up all night with me debugging code and worried about whether our algorithms might cause delivery delays for Christmas presents. Then the mask snapped back into place. That's not my problem anymore. I gave them access to databases. What they do with that access isn't on me. Agent Chen leaned across the table. Mr. Chen, if you cooperate with us right now, give us the access codes, the security protocols, anything that could help us stop this, the prosecution will take that into account. Marcus laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. Cooperate? You mean become a traitor to the people who've been paying my salary for the past year and a half? You mean become a patriot to the country you were born in, Yamamoto said coldly. The radio crackled again. Agent Chen, Dataflow just initiated a complete server wipe. They're destroying evidence and cutting communication lines. Whatever window we had for stopping this remotely just closed. Agent Chen looked at Marcus with something approaching desperation. Last chance, Chen. Help us fix this, or spend the rest of your life knowing you helped foreign agents potentially kill American sailors. Marcus stared at the table for 30 seconds that felt like hours. When he finally looked up, his eyes had gone completely dead. I want full immunity, witness protection, and a new identity. Done, Agent Chen said immediately. The access codes are in my apartment. Hidden partition on my gaming laptop. Password is TechFlow 2019, the year David and I incorporated. His voice was mechanical now, all emotion drained out. But Agent Chen, you better hurry. The malware activates automatically in 6 hours, and I don't know how to stop it. The next 4 hours were a blur of federal agents, cybersecurity experts, and increasingly frantic phone calls. Marcus's apartment had been raided, his gaming laptop seized, and the access codes recovered. But when the FBI's cyber division tried to use them to access Dataflow's servers, they found nothing but digital scorched earth. They've destroyed everything, Agent Chen announced at 7:23 p.m., her voice hoarse from shouting into phones all day. Every server, every backup, every trace of the malware's source code. It's like they knew exactly when we'd get the access codes. Marcus sat in the corner of our conference room, now wearing handcuffs, staring at the wall with that same dead expression he'd worn since agreeing to cooperate. But something about Agent Chen's words made him flinch. Marcus, I said, walking over to him. How did they know? How did Dataflow know exactly when to start destroying evidence? He wouldn't look at me, but I saw his jaw tighten. The synchronization protocols, I continued, the pieces clicking together. You said everything was being forwarded to Dataflow in real time. That includes this conversation. They've been listening to everything we've discussed for the past 4 hours. Agent Chen spun around. Are you telling me they knew we had the access codes before we even tried to use them? Worse than that, I said, my stomach sinking. They knew Marcus was cooperating. Which means they knew he'd given up the apartment location, the laptop, everything. Janet looked up from her legal pad. If Dataflow knew Marcus had turned, they'd assume he was compromised. They'd accelerate their timeline. What timeline? Agent Chen demanded. Marcus finally spoke, his voice barely audible. The malware wasn't supposed to activate for 3 weeks. They wanted to plant it in as many shipping systems as possible before triggering it. He looked up at me with something that might have been regret. But if they think I've told you everything, they'll activate it early, Agent Chen finished. How early? The original code had multiple activation triggers. Timer-based, data threshold-based, or emergency manual override. Marcus's hands were shaking now. If they'd been listening to us, they could have triggered the override 2 hours ago. Agent Chen was already on her radio. Command, I need immediate contact with Pacific Fleet Operations and Singapore Port Authority. We may have active malware in shipping navigation systems right now. The response came back within minutes, and it wasn't good. 3 cargo vessels in the South China Sea had reported GPS anomalies in the past hour. 2 military destroyers were experiencing intermittent radar malfunctions. And Singapore's port traffic control system was showing ghost signals, phantom ships appearing and disappearing from their tracking screens. It's already happening, Yamamoto said, his face gray as he read updates on his phone. My company has 17 ships currently in Pacific waters. If their navigation systems fail during tonight's storm front, how many people are we talking about? I asked, dreading the answer. Crew members. Probably 800 across our fleet alone. But if this affects container ships in shipping lanes, or causes collisions near ports. Yamamoto looked up from his phone. Potentially thousands. I turned to Marcus, who was now openly crying. Is there any way to stop it? Any kill switch or override code you didn't tell them about? I don't know, he sobbed. They never showed me the actual malware code. I just provided database access. I never thought. I never wanted people to get hurt. Agent Chen's radio crackled with another urgent update. Agent Chen, we've got reports of navigation system failure spreading. Coast Guard is tracking 12 vessels with confirmed GPS malfunctions, and the number is growing. I stared out the conference room window at Portland's skyline, thinking about hundreds of sailors thousands of miles away who were about to face the storm of their lives with compromised navigation systems, all because my business partner had decided to sell out our company for money. But then I remembered something that made my blood freeze. Marcus, I said slowly, the backup servers I set up. The ones that archived all our company communications. Dataflow doesn't know about those, do they? He looked at me with confusion. What do you mean? You knew about our standard daily backups. But the real-time mirroring system I implemented, I never told anyone about that. Not even you. I was already pulling out my tablet. Which means Dataflow doesn't know I have copies of every file they ever received from our systems. Agent Chen was suddenly standing next to me. What kind of files? Everything. Including the original malware code they sent Marcus for testing integration with our systems. My fingers flew across the tablet screen. Marcus, remember 6 weeks ago when you said you needed to test some optimization protocols on our development servers? His face went pale. David, no. You can't possibly have full system images. Every file, every process, every line of code that ran on our servers during that test. I found the archived folder and opened it. Including a complete copy of something called maritime_nav_disorders_rupture.exe with full source code and configuration files. For the first time in hours, Agent Chen smiled. The FBI's cybersecurity team descended on our office like a digital SWAT unit. Within 30 minutes, they transformed our conference room into a command center, with Agent Chen coordinating between 3 laptops, 2 secure phones, and a direct line to the Pentagon. Mr. Kim, we need you to walk us through exactly how to access these archived files, said Dr. Sarah Martinez, the lead cyber analyst who'd arrived 20 minutes ago with a team of technicians. I logged into the backup server, my hands steadier now that we might actually have a solution. The maritime_nav_disruptor.exe file is here, along with what looks like configuration templates for different ship types. Military vessels, container ships, cruise liners, they customized the malware for specific navigation systems. Dr. Martinez leaned over my shoulder, scanning the code. This is incredibly sophisticated. Multi-vector attack protocols, adaptive algorithms that modify based on weather conditions and shipping traffic density. She looked up at Agent Chen. Whoever wrote this wasn't just trying to cause random chaos. They were designing maximum catastrophic impact. Marcus had stopped crying and was now staring at my tablet screen with a mixture of fascination and horror. I never saw that part of the code. They only showed me the database interface modules. Because you were just the delivery boy, Yamamoto said with disgust. They never trusted you with the actual weapon. Agent Chen's secure phone buzzed. She answered it and immediately put it on speaker. Agent Chen here. Sarah, this is Admiral Rodriguez, Pacific Fleet Command. We've got a situation developing faster than we anticipated. The USS Columbia is reporting complete navigation failure 60 miles southeast of Guam, and they're heading directly into the path of a Maersk container ship. My stomach dropped. How long until potential collision? At current speeds? 18 minutes. The container ship's systems are also compromised, they're showing false position data and can't see the Columbia on their screens. Dr. Martinez was frantically typing. I found something. The malware has an emergency shutdown protocol buried in the code. But activating it requires a cryptographic key that's, wait. She scrolled down through hundreds of lines of code. The key is generated using a combination of the original deployment timestamp and the source database credentials. Which we have, I said, pulling up Marcus's archived emails. Every database access he provided to Dataflow is documented with timestamps and login credentials. Agent Chen grabbed her radio. All units, we may have found a kill switch. Dr. Martinez, how long do you need? Give me 12 minutes to compile the shutdown protocol and generate the cryptographic keys. Dr. Martinez was already connecting her laptop to our system. But I need someone who understands the original database architecture to help me map the credential sequences. Marcus looked up from his handcuffs. That's me. I designed the database access protocols. Agent Chen hesitated. Can we trust him? You don't have a choice, Marcus said quietly. The credential mapping system uses dynamic encryption based on database query patterns. I'm the only one who knows how the sequences are generated. Yamamoto's phone rang. He answered it and immediately went pale. Agent Chen, that was my operations center. 2 of our ships just reported engine control malfunctions. The malware isn't just affecting navigation, it's spreading to other ship systems. 12 minutes just became 8, Agent Chen said grimly. I unlocked Marcus's handcuffs myself, my hands shaking as I realized that the man who betrayed everything we built together was now our only hope of preventing a maritime disaster. Marcus, if you're lying to us, if this is some kind of trick. It's not, he said, rubbing his wrists. David, I know you hate me right now. I know I've destroyed everything. But those are real people on those ships. Marcus sat down at Dr. Martinez's laptop and began typing with the same focused intensity I'd seen him use during our all-night coding sessions years ago. The database credentials rotate every 6 hours based on query volume and user access patterns. But Dataflow didn't know about the rotation algorithm, so they've been using static keys for the past 3 weeks. Which means? Dr. Martinez asked, watching his code scroll across the screen. Which means I can generate a master shutdown key that will override their malware across all infected systems simultaneously. Marcus paused, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. But once I do this, Dataflow will know exactly how we stop them. They'll never be able to use this malware architecture again. Agent Chen's radio crackled. Agent Chen, USS Columbia reports they can see the container ship on visual. Distance approximately 2 miles and closing. Collision imminent in less than 6 minutes. Marcus looked at me one last time, and for a moment I saw my old friend, the guy who'd stayed up until 3 a.m. helping me debug our first client presentation, who'd celebrated our first major contract with cheap pizza and expensive dreams. Then he pressed enter, and we all held our breath. The second stretched into eternity as Marcus's shutdown protocol compiled and deployed across the infected shipping networks. Dr. Martinez watched her screens, tracking the malware's response to our kill command. "It's working," she said, her voice tight with concentration. "I'm seeing system responses from 17 vessels so far. Navigation systems coming back online, GPS coordinates stabilizing." Agent Chen's radio burst to life. "Agent Chen, this is Admiral Rodriguez. USS Columbia reports navigation restored. They're altering course to avoid the container ship. Crisis averted." The collective sigh of relief in our conference room was audible. But Dr. Martinez was frowning at her screen. "Wait. I'm getting anomalous readings from the Singapore Port Authority systems. The malware there isn't responding to the kill switch." Marcus leaned over to look at her data. "That's not possible. The shutdown protocol should have propagated to all infected networks simultaneously. Unless they're running a different version," I said, a cold dread settling in my stomach. "Marcus, how many times did Dataflow request access to the Singapore databases specifically?" He thought for a moment. 3 separate instances over the past 2 months. They said they needed to test compatibility with different maritime traffic control protocols. His face went ashen. Oh God. They weren't just stealing data from Singapore. They were using it to design something bigger. Yamamoto's phone rang again. He listened for 30 seconds, his expression growing darker. "Agent Chen, Singapore Port Authority is reporting complete system failure. They've lost tracking on over 200 vessels in their shipping lanes, including 4 military convoys and 6 LNG tankers." "LNG tankers?" Dr. Martinez looked up sharply. "Liquefied natural gas. Those ships are essentially floating bombs if they collide with anything." Marcus was typing frantically, pulling up archived files from our backup servers. "David, remember when I said I needed admin access to optimize our Singapore data processing? I think Dataflow wasn't just installing malware, they were using our servers as a staging ground to launch attacks on Singapore's infrastructure directly." I watched him navigate through folders of archived system logs, looking for evidence of what Dataflow had actually done with our Singapore access. What we found was terrifying in its scope. "They turned our servers into a backdoor," Marcus said, his voice barely audible. "Every time we processed legitimate shipping data for our Singapore clients, Dataflow was simultaneously mapping the entire Port Authority network. Security protocols, emergency systems, traffic management algorithms, they copied everything." Agent Chen was already coordinating with what sounded like half the federal government through her secure phone. "Yes, sir, we need immediate contact with Singapore Maritime Authority. This is now a matter of international security." But Yamamoto was reading something on his tablet that made his face go completely white. "Agent Chen, we have a bigger problem. Singapore isn't just a shipping port. The Strait of Singapore handles 25% of all global maritime trade. If Dataflow can manipulate traffic control in those waters, they could cause a shipping crisis that would cripple international commerce," I finished, understanding finally dawning. This was never about stealing our clients or destroying our company. We were just a pathway to something much larger. Marcus stared at the evidence on our screens, months of systematic preparation for what amounted to economic warfare against global shipping infrastructure. "They played me completely," he whispered. "I thought I was just selling competitive intelligence to keep our company afloat. But I was actually helping them plan an attack on the entire Pacific trade network." Agent Chen's phone buzzed with an urgent call. She answered immediately. "Agent Chen." "Yes, I understand. How many ships?" She hung up and looked at us with grim determination. "Singapore reports they've lost contact with 43 vessels in the past 12 minutes. 2 LNG tankers are on collision courses with container ships, and the Port Authority has no way to communicate warnings." Dr. Martinez looked up from her laptop. "Our kill switch worked on the malware that was designed for individual ship navigation systems. But Singapore is running something completely different, infrastructure-level code that's designed to control entire shipping networks. Can we stop it?" I asked. Marcus was already shaking his head. "Not remotely. The Singapore system is air-gapped from external networks for security reasons. Someone would have to physically access their control center to deploy a shutdown protocol." "How long do we have?" Agent Chen demanded. Marcus pulled up a map of Singapore's shipping lanes on his tablet. "Based on current traffic patterns and the chaos this malware is causing, maybe 90 minutes before we see major collisions. After that." He didn't need to finish. We all understood that we were potentially looking at the worst maritime disaster in modern history, and my business partner's betrayal had made it possible. The secure video call connected at 11:47 p.m., linking our Portland conference room to what looked like a high-tech command center in Singapore. Deputy Harbor Master Lin Wei appeared on screen, her face illuminated by dozens of emergency status displays flashing red behind her. "Agent Chen, we have successfully deployed your shutdown protocol to our primary traffic control systems," she reported, her English crisp despite the obvious stress. "However, we are encountering what our technicians describe as Hydra malware." Dr. Martinez leaned forward. "Hydra malware. Each time we eliminate one infection vector, 2 new variants appear in different system components. Your kill switch works temporarily, but the malware regenerates with modified signatures within minutes." Marcus, who had been silent since we'd established the Singapore connection, suddenly sat up straight. "They're using our machine learning algorithms," he said, his voice hollow. "David, remember the adaptive optimization protocols we developed for the Yamamoto contract? The ones that automatically rewrite themselves based on system performance?" My blood went cold. "You gave them our core AI architecture." "I didn't know that's what they wanted it for. They said they needed examples of dynamic system optimization for their own client projects." Marcus pulled up files on his tablet with shaking hands. "But if they've integrated our adaptive algorithms into the malware, it explains why the Singapore system keeps evolving," Dr. Martinez finished grimly. Every time we attack it, it learns from our methods and develops new defense mechanisms. Deputy Harbor Master Lin's voice crackled through the speakers. Agent Chin, I must inform you that we now have confirmed collision trajectory between the LNG tanker Ocean Prosperity and the container vessel Maritime Success. Our traffic control systems are showing their positions incorrectly to both vessels' navigation crews. Agent Chin grabbed her radio. All units, I need immediate coordination with Singapore Coast Guard for emergency vessel intercept operations. Yamamoto was frantically typing on his phone. The Ocean Prosperity is one of ours. Captain Rodriguez has 23 years of experience, but without accurate position data. He looked up at us with barely controlled panic. If an LNG tanker explodes in Singapore's shipping lanes, the chain reaction could sink dozens of vessels. How long until potential impact? I asked, dreading the answer. Deputy Lin checked her displays. Based on current velocities and the false navigation data both ships are receiving, approximately 47 minutes. Marcus was scrolling through code on his laptop, his fingers moving with desperate efficiency. There might be a way to stop this. The adaptive algorithms I gave them were based on our original TechFlow architecture, which means they have the same underlying vulnerabilities we built in for debugging purposes. Dr. Martinez leaned over his shoulder. What kind of vulnerabilities? Emergency override protocols. When we were developing the system, we needed a way to completely shut down all adaptive functions if they started generating infinite loops or consuming too many system resources. Marcus's typing grew more frantic. But accessing the override requires administrative credentials from the original development environment. Which you have? Agent Chin asked. Marcus looked at me with something approaching hope for the first time in hours. We both have them. The override system requires dual authentication, both founding partners' digital signatures simultaneously. I stared at him, understanding the implications. You're saying that to stop this malware, I have to digitally sign off on emergency protocols alongside the person who created this disaster in the first place. David, Marcus said quietly, I know I've destroyed everything between us. But those ships. Deputy Lin's voice interrupted us. Agent Chin, we are now tracking 17 vessels with confirmed navigation system compromises. The situation is deteriorating rapidly. Agent Chen looked between Marcus and me. How long would this override procedure take? If we can establish a secure connection to the Singapore systems, maybe 8 minutes to implement and deploy, Marcus answered. But it has to be both of us. The authentication system won't accept single-party authorization for emergency overrides. I thought about the 23 crew members on the Ocean Prosperity, about the hundreds of sailors throughout Singapore's shipping lanes who were navigating blind through one of the world's busiest maritime corridors. Then I thought about Marcus sitting across from me, the man who had systematically betrayed our partnership, stolen nearly $2 million, and provided the tools for what was becoming an international crisis. If I do this, I said slowly, if I help you deploy this override, you're going to federal prison for a very long time. You understand that? Marcus nodded. I understand. And David? After tonight, I'll understand if you never want to see me again. But right now, those ships need both of us. I looked at Agent Chen, at Dr. Martinez, at the desperate faces on the video conference screen from Singapore. Then I walked over to Marcus's laptop and placed my hand on the biometric scanner. Let's save some lives, I said. We'll worry about justice later. The dual authentication process required us to work in perfect synchronization. Every keystroke, every command entry, every security protocol had to be executed simultaneously. Marcus and I sat side by side at his laptop, our hands moving across the keyboard in a choreographed dance we performed hundreds of times during our partnership, but never under circumstances like these. Initiating emergency override protocol Alpha 77, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. David, I need you to enter your foundational key sequence on my mark. Standing by, I replied, my fingers positioned over the number pad. Dar. Martinez monitored our progress from her station. Connection to Singapore traffic control established. You'll have a 12-minute window before their security protocols lock out external access attempts. Marcus said. We typed in unison, my 16-digit foundational key followed immediately by his complementary sequence. The system accepted our credentials and opened the emergency override interface, a stark black screen with bright red text that I'd hoped never to see outside our testing environment. TechFlow Adaptive System Emergency Override. Warning, complete system shutdown imminent. Dual authorization confirmed. Enter termination sequence to proceed. Phase 2, Marcus announced. We need to input the malware-specific process identifiers. David, pull up the Singapore system logs while I generate the termination codes. I navigated to Deputy Lin's shared data stream, scanning through hundreds of lines of system activity. I'm seeing processes labeled navoptimize_7.3 and trafficflow_adaptive running across multiple server clusters. Marcus's face went pale as he read the process names. Oh no. David, those aren't just running our adaptive algorithms. They're running evolved versions that have been modified far beyond our original specifications. What does that mean? Agent Chin demanded. It means the malware has been improving itself for weeks, I said, understanding dawning with horrible clarity. Every time it encountered new shipping data or system configurations, it evolved to become more effective. Deputy Lin's voice crackled through the speakers with increasing urgency. Agent Chen, collision countdown now at 31 minutes. We are also detecting malware spread to harbor approach systems. Incoming vessels are receiving false docking instructions. Marcus was typing furiously, generating override codes for each evolved process variant. David, I need you to authenticate each termination sequence as I create them. But we're looking at 47 separate malware processes that need to be shut down simultaneously. 47. How is that possible? The adaptive system has been replicating itself across every network component in Singapore's maritime infrastructure, Dr. Martinez explained, monitoring the Singapore data feeds. Traffic control, weather reporting, emergency communications, fuel management systems, it's everywhere. Agent Chen's secure phone rang. She answered immediately and her face went ashen as she listened. That was NSA. They're detecting similar malware signatures activating in shipping networks across Hong Kong, Tokyo, and Manila. This isn't just an attack on Singapore, it's a coordinated assault on Pacific Rim maritime commerce. Marcus stopped typing and stared at the screen. That's impossible. I only provided access to Singapore databases. There's no way data flow could have reached other port authorities from our systems. Unless Singapore wasn't the target, Yamamoto said grimly, looking up from his tablet. What if Singapore was the testing ground? Prove the malware works on the busiest shipping hub in the world, then deploy it simultaneously across every major Pacific port. I felt sick as the full scope of Dataflow's operation became clear. Marcus, when you gave them our adaptive algorithms, did you include the network propagation protocols? The self-deployment functions? Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. They said they needed those for automatic system updates across multiple client installations. You gave them the ability to spread the malware automatically across interconnected maritime networks, Dr. Martinez said. Singapore, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Manila, they're all linked through shared shipping databases and communication protocols. Deputy Lin's voice cut through our horrified realization. Agent Chen, collision alert. The Ocean Prosperity and Maritime Success are now within visual range of each other. Both vessels report they cannot see the other ship on their radar or navigation displays. Marcus grabbed my arm. David, we can still stop the Singapore systems. Even if the malware has spread to other ports, we can at least prevent the collisions here. But I need your authorization codes for the final shutdown sequence. I looked at the termination interface, showing 47 different malware processes ready for simultaneous destruction. One wrong keystroke could crash Singapore's entire maritime network, leaving hundreds of ships completely blind. But doing nothing meant watching the Ocean Prosperity and potentially dozens of other vessels face certain disaster. 28 minutes to collision, Deputy Lin announced. Singapore Coast Guard has dispatched emergency vessels, but they cannot reach the collision zone in time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as Marcus waited for my final authorization. Outside our conference room windows, Portland slept peacefully, unaware that a decision made in a downtown office building was about to determine whether we'd wake up to news of the worst maritime disaster in modern history. Marcus, I said quietly, if this doesn't work, if we crash their systems and make things worse. Then we'll have tried everything we could, he replied. David, I know I don't deserve your trust. But those ships need us to try. I entered my final authorization sequence and pressed enter. The override sequence deployed across Singapore's maritime network like digital lightning. On Dr. Martinez's screens, we watched 47 malware processes terminate simultaneously at 12:23 a.m. Singapore time, exactly 18 minutes before the projected collision between Ocean Prosperity and Maritime Success. Systems responding, Deputy Lin reported, her voice tight with concentration. Navigation displays coming back online across the network. I'm seeing accurate position data returning to both vessels. Marcus and I sat frozen at his laptop, watching status indicators flip from red to green as our emergency protocols restored normal operations to Singapore's traffic control systems. But the real test came 30 seconds later. Ocean Prosperity reports radar contact with container vessel at bearing 270, distance 1.2 nautical miles, Deputy Lin announced. Both ships are executing emergency course corrections. Collision threat eliminated. The relief in our conference room was palpable, but Agent Chen was already coordinating the broader response. Dr. Martinez, what's the status on the other infected ports? Hong Kong and Manila are implementing modified versions of our shutdown protocol now, she reported. Tokyo's systems are proving more resistant, their malware evolved differently than Singapore's, but their IT teams are making progress. Marcus closed his laptop and looked at me with exhaustion that went bone deep. David, I need you to know. Don't, I interrupted. We'll talk about forgiveness later. Right now, Agent Chen has some paperwork for you. Agent Chen stood up, pulling out handcuffs that looked somehow more official than the ones Marcus had worn earlier. Marcus Chen, you're under arrest for violations of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, conspiracy to commit corporate espionage, and providing material support to foreign intelligence operations. As she read him his Miranda rights, Marcus looked at me one final time. The company can recover from this, David. You're a better engineer than I ever was, and you always understood the business better than both of us combined. Marcus, I said as Agent Chen led him toward the door, the federal prosecutor is going to offer you deals in exchange for testimony against Dataflow's other assets. Take them. Don't make this worse by trying to protect people who used you. He nodded silently as they walked out. Yamamoto stayed behind as the FBI team packed up their equipment. David, I want you to know that despite everything that's happened, Yamamoto Industries intends to honor our existing contracts with TechFlow. What you did tonight, the backup systems, the override protocols, that shows the kind of forward thinking we need in our logistics partners. Thank you, I said. Though I suspect we'll need to rebuild our entire technical infrastructure from scratch. Probably. But I've got some recommendations for cybersecurity consultants who specialize in corporate recovery from insider threats. Yamamoto handed me his card. Call me next week. Let's talk about expanding our partnership once you've had time to process all this. I sat alone in our conference room as dawn broke over Portland, surrounded by empty coffee cups and the debris of the longest night of my life. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Janet Morrison, 43 unread emails from clients, and one text message from my fiancé asking if I was okay. But I was okay. Marcus was facing federal charges that would likely put him away for 15 to 20 years. Dataflow Systems was under international investigation, with their assets frozen and their operations shut down. And TechFlow Solutions, damaged but not destroyed, would survive. 6 months later, I testified before a federal grand jury about corporate cybersecurity vulnerabilities in critical infrastructure. Marcus pled guilty to all charges in exchange for cooperation that helped prosecute 12 other Dataflow assets. The court ordered him to pay $2.3 million in restitution, money I'll probably never see, but the principle mattered. TechFlow is rebuilding with new partners, better security, and clients who understand that the company that helped stop an international maritime crisis might be worth trusting with their logistics data. Sometimes the best revenge is just watching justice work exactly the way it's supposed to.